Have you ever taken one of those personality tests online and thought, wow, this is totally me? You know the ones I'm talking about. You answer a bunch of questions, get sorted into a category with a cool 4-letter code, and suddenly you're defining yourself as an INFJ or an ESTJ. Maybe you've even put it in your Instagram bio or used it to explain why you act a certain way at work. Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's a pretty good chance that test isn't telling you much of anything real about who you are. And today, we're going to dig into why some of the most popular personality tests out there, the ones millions of people trust, are built on outdated science that doesn't hold up anymore. Let's start with the big one, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. This is probably the most famous personality test in the world. It's been used by companies for hiring, by coaches for personal development, and it's absolutely everywhere on social media. The test sorts people into 16 different personality types based on 4 categories: whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you trust your senses or your intuition, whether you make decisions based on thinking or feeling, and whether you prefer to judge or perceive the world around you. Sounds pretty solid, right? Here's the problem. The MBTI was created back in the 1940s by 2 women, Catherine Briggs and her daughter Isabel Myers. And here's the kicker. Neither of them had formal training in psychology. They were enthusiasts of Carl Jung's work on psychological types, and they built their test based on his ideas. Now, Jung was a brilliant thinker, but his theories were based on observations of his clinical patients, mostly adults with serious psychological issues. He never properly tested whether these types actually existed in the general population, especially not in children or across different cultures. Fast forward to today, and we've got a major issue. Modern psychological research has shown that the MBTI fails on 2 critical measures that any legitimate psychological test needs to pass: reliability and validity. Let me break that down for you. Reliability means that if you take the test today and take it again in a few weeks, you should get roughly the same result. But studies have shown that about 50% of people who retake the MBTI just 5 weeks later get sorted into a completely different personality type. That's basically a coin flip. If your personality type changes that dramatically in just over a month, what's the test actually measuring? Then there's validity, which asks whether the test actually measures what it claims to measure. Research has found that while the MBTI correlates somewhat with other personality tests, it doesn't correlate very well with people's actual behavior. And if a personality test can't predict how you'll actually act in real situations, what's the point? But here's the thing. This isn't just about the quality of the test itself. The real problem runs deeper. The entire theory behind the MBTI, the idea that people fall into distinct personality types, has been largely abandoned by modern psychology. It's not that the MBTI creators were trying to deceive anyone. At the time they developed it, the concept of fixed personality types made sense with the limited research methods available. But science has moved on. So why do so many people still swear by the MBTI? Why does it feel so accurate when you read your type description? This is where something called the Forer effect comes in, also known as the Barnum effect. It's the same psychological phenomenon that makes horoscopes feel personally meaningful. When you read a personality description that's written in fairly general positive terms, your brain naturally finds ways to make it fit. You fill in the gaps with your own experiences and memories. It's like looking at clouds and seeing shapes. Your mind is incredibly good at finding patterns and meaning, even when they're not really there. Think about it. If I tell you that you're systematic, logical, and detail-oriented, but also that you value harmony in social situations and are open to new experiences, chances are you can find examples from your life that match at least some of those descriptions. We all can. That's because these descriptions are broad enough to apply to almost anyone in some context. Now, before you think I'm saying all personality psychology is nonsense, let me be clear. That's not the case at all. The problem isn't studying personality. The problem is the outdated theory of fixed personality types. Modern psychology has moved toward a much more sophisticated understanding based on personality traits instead of types. This is where the Big Five personality model comes in. Unlike the MBTI, the Big Five doesn't sort you into a category. Instead, it measures 5 core dimensions of personality on a spectrum. Think of it like an equalizer on a stereo system. You've got multiple sliders, each set at different levels. Everyone has all 5 traits, just in different amounts. These 5 traits are conscientiousness, which is basically self-discipline and how organized you are. Extroversion, which measures how you engage with the outside world. Agreeableness, which relates to how much you value social harmony and empathy. Neuroticism, which is your tendency to experience negative emotions. And openness to experience, which captures your imagination and willingness to try new things. The Big Five is built on decades of research and statistical analysis. It holds up across different cultures and languages. You can see these traits developing in children as they grow. Researchers have even identified similar trait dimensions in other animals. And crucially, the Big Five shows much better reliability and validity than the MBTI. If you take a properly designed Big Five assessment and then take it again later, your scores will be relatively consistent. And those scores actually correlate with real-world behaviors and outcomes. Here's something else that's important. The Big Five recognizes that personality isn't something you're born with fully formed. You're born with a biological temperament, yes. Some babies are naturally more reactive, some are calmer. But personality develops over time through your interactions with your environment, your culture, your education, and your experiences. That's a huge distinction. Temperament is biological. Personality is built. This means personality can change, especially during childhood and adolescence, but even into adulthood. You're not locked into a type. If you're naturally a bit more introverted, but you work on your social skills and put yourself in more social situations, you can develop behaviors that look more extroverted. You're not betraying your true type. You're growing and adapting. What about those other tests you might have heard of? There's the Enneagram, which sorts people into 9 personality types. There are graphology tests that claim to analyze your personality based on your handwriting. The scientific consensus on these is pretty much the same as the MBTI. They're based on outdated theories that don't hold up to modern scrutiny. They might be fun, they might give you something to talk about at parties, but they're not giving you accurate information about who you are. And this matters more than you might think. When you define yourself by a personality type, especially one that isn't scientifically valid, you can start limiting yourself. You might avoid certain opportunities because that's not who I am. You might excuse behaviors that you could actually work on by saying, that's just my personality type. It takes away your agency and your ability to grow. Think of it this way. If someone tells you you're an ISTJ and you read that ISTJs are not creative, you might stop trying to develop creative skills. But creativity isn't a fixed trait you either have or don't have. It's something that can be developed with practice. The same goes for social skills, leadership abilities, emotional intelligence, all of it. Now, does this mean you should never take personality tests? Not necessarily. If you're using them purely for entertainment, like those BuzzFeed quizzes about which superhero you are, that's fine as long as you know it's just for fun. But when it comes to making important decisions about your career, your relationships, or your personal development, you deserve tools that are actually backed by solid science. If you're genuinely interested in understanding your personality better, look for assessments based on the Big Five model. Many of these are available online, some free, some paid. But remember, even the best personality test is just a snapshot, a tool for self-reflection. It's not a definition of who you are or who you can become. The bottom line is this: personality is complex, fluid, and deeply influenced by your experiences and choices. You're not a 4-letter code. You're not a number on the Enneagram. You're a dynamic human being with the capacity to change, grow, and surprise yourself. And that's way more interesting than any box a test could put you in. So the next time someone asks you what your Myers-Briggs type is, maybe you can share what you've learned today. Science has moved forward, and it's time our understanding of ourselves moved forward with it.